to Movie Reel. I'm Kevin Tracy.
I'm Samantha Tomlinson, and what do we do on this podcast, Kevin?
We talk about movies and have a grand old time. And this month we are going into Star Wars month, but not just Star Wars, specifically just the prequels, because we already did the Red Stritch last year. If you want to hear about that, check out those episodes because they're really funny.
We're just like, it's more, I feel like it's funny also because obviously you're a really intense, hardcore nerd, and I've only gotten into Star Wars in the last, like, 5-ish years. So last year, particularly because last year I was watching Clone Wars, and, like, just your excitement level is
It's
so
like, oh,
high.
like rewatch this vicariously through you. You get to experience this for the first time, and I get to experience that again.
Yeah.
That's why I was excited. Um, but yeah, we're gonna be talking about the prequels this month. So we're starting off with Phantom Menace, and before we get into that, we have a special guest, my friend Ben, who's been on a couple episodes so far. So why don't you say hi, Ben?
Hello there. I'm the aforementioned Ben.
Yes, hello there indeed.
So, the prequels. I watched them. Like I said, I didn't get into Star Wars until I think I was like 19. It was like summer going, like that year. Force Awakens was coming out the end of that year. And like we got my sister and my mom found the Tridge on DVD and Blu-ray at like Costco. We bought them, I watched them, and then I'm like, yep, I love Star Wars. I always knew I was gonna love it. I just hadn't seen it. And the prequels I didn't own. I didn't have a way to watch it. And so one summer when we were still at Chico, you and I just
Yep.
watched them. And I, first of all, I gotta say, I remember we were watching them, and Frank, who was your roommate at the time, had
Yeah.
said one of the best, like, insults I think I had ever heard referring to the prequels. He said, "Watch," because you were telling me how they get better by default.
Yeah, I feel like the worst one of the prequels is Phantom Menace, and then the second one's a little bit better, and then the third one I feel like is arguably the best. Would you kind of agree with that,
Yeah,
Ben?
that's
In that kind of rating?
yeah.
I get, because the first time I watched them was like, oh yeah, Phantom Menace is definitely the worst one. I don't really Attack of the Clones. Everyone kind of universally says is the worst one, and this is how I view it. Phantom Menace, I have more issues with the story and the plot. It's just really thin. Whereas Attack of the Clones, the story is a lot better, but the dialogue is not the best. And
Yeah, I
Phantom,
don't like sand.
See, I have kind of a mixed reaction to Attack of the Clones because I know for a fact that was the first movie I ever saw more than once in theaters.
oh,
Yeah, no, I remember seeing all of these in theaters. Like, I remember going into the theaters knowing that I already love Star Wars because I basically grew up, like, I almost wore out like our VHS copies of the original trilogy. Like, I watched those all the time. Like, I had like all these toys and stuff like that before like these movies even came out. So I was like probably like 4 or 5 when I saw Phantom Menace in theaters, and I still have a bunch of like the toys and stuff that came with that. And then I saw, 2 and 3, and just I absolutely loved it. And I was such a little kid, so I didn't really see all like the flaws that were there. I just saw it as like
yeah.
cool,
I mean,
awesome
yeah, the
space
movies were
action.
great at the time.
Oh yeah, and like I was a kid, and that like at the time, like that was very much geared towards kids with like Jar Jar Banks and like like all the funny battle droids and R2 being kind of an asshole, but it was just really cool action that just was really cool to see, and it definitely kind of hits that uh um nostalgic checkbox for me, but yeah, going back into it now, it's just you can't ignore all the flaws now.
No. And I think the first time I watched them, I was just kind of blown away by how bad they were, or specifically like Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, because obviously we talked for like a long time last year about how, you know, not Phantom Menace, sorry, the original trilogy changed cinema, and just it's not just, oh, they were really it's not quite the same as like what like Avengers today, if that makes sense. Like Avengers didn't necessarily
Yeah.
change film, and you know, this with the prequels, I just was so I couldn't believe how did George Lucas make A New Hope? And because did he write and direct A New Hope?
I believe he wrote and directed that, and no, I don't think he directed that one. I think he only directed Return of the
Are you sure? I
Jedi,
thought
because I remember, I think it was like Irving Kershner
that was
directed
Empire.
Empire.
I gotta check. I thought he
I think he
directed
I
New
think he
Hope.
directed
Oh no, he did
Return of the
direct.
Jedi.
He
I thought he
directed A New
directed
Hope.
Jedi.
Wrote and directed
Oh,
New
okay.
Hope.
He didn't direct the other two.
Okay.
And I was just kind of so like I wanted to understand, and I remember like I had been hearing all these complaints about Jar Jar Binks and all this stuff, and I didn't understand, and literally the first like 2 minutes of meeting Jar Jar, I'm like, I get it. I get why everybody hates him. And
We're
and
going home.
I mean, we'll talk about it more in a second, but like I was so surprised, but I also did agree with you. Each film, in a sense, does get better. I think, like I said, Attack of the Clones, the dialogue takes a dip, but and Revenge of the Sith does still have some. It does have some story issues. It has some dialogue issues, but story wise and plot wise, it is definitely the most solid, and it is the best one. And say whatever you want about the prequels, like you don't have to love them, whatever, but at least acknowledge that they are better and way more fun than the sequels, I think. I I
Yeah.
feel like Force Awakens, I was the most bored. Last Jedi, I was interested. Last Jedi has a bunch of good stuff in it, but it's overshadowed by the bad stuff. And
Yeah.
then Rise of Skywalker, I was the most interested, but Rise of Skywalker should have been Last Jedi. And it was just way more of a mess, whereas the prequels, it is a consistent story. Like
Yeah.
George Lucas
Yeah.
and I still kind of think this, I don't think I don't think he's like a horrendous writer. I think because there are a lot of like great pieces of dialogue in these, but I think he's an exceptional visionary. And there's a lot of really like beautiful images
Oh,
in these films,
absolutely.
especially this one, like the Gungan city. I'm like, this is really visually very appealing and very nice
Yeah.
to look at.
And
Some of the locations in Phantom Menace are some of the best location shots and stuff they've done in Star Wars.
I completely agree with that.
Where
Yeah.
was
And
that? Somebody
it was
told
like in
me Italy?
it was in like it was like in Italy,
A
like
lot of
Naboo.
the Tatooine, a lot of the Naboo stuff was done in
Yeah.
like the lakes and stuff on Italy,
It was like Milan, I want to say, like Milan, Italy, or something like
Or
that.
maybe
something
like
like that.
Como or something.
Yeah,
That sounds
and then
architect.
Tatooine.
That's
Tunisia.
Tunisia. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Um
Coruscant was soundstage.
yeah. But even the design,
um,
like the design for
Coruscant was blue
Coruscant,
screen.
yeah,
the
yeah, Coruscant. That was real. That was on location.
the design for Coruscant, I think, is really cool, and that's one reason why I do like enjoy Attack of the Clones, because I think the thing I love about the prequels though is because so they have grown on me. I said this the first time I watched them. I was just like, I couldn't believe why they were so much worse. But having, watched them a couple of times since, they have grown on me a lot. I think also watching Clone Wars helped them grow on me. I think I love
Yeah.
that it's the building blocks of what is going to happen. And we didn't need the sequels. We didn't need to know what happens after. We did need
No.
this information. We needed to know, because especially after Return of the Jedi, everything we just watched unfold, we needed to see like why did Anakin go to the dark side in the first place? Like what drove him there? Like it's and
Like what happened to all the Jedi?
yeah,
Like
eh,
how did the Empire become to be? Like all this stuff. Like it makes sense. Like from like a story perspective to kind of like go back to the beginning and tell like how all this stuff happened. But from like at the time, if you just saw like A New Hope, it was just your average run of the mill sword and sorcery movie just set in space. Like that was really like the only thing that kind of played it apart from all these other like crazy um fantasy movies at the time, because that's essentially what this movie is. It's a fantasy movie with a unique sci-fi twist.
yeah. I said this last year and I recommend it still. Mark Hamill, go on YouTube, Mark Hamill on Seth Meyers, and he talks about Star Wars. And he was saying how when he had first read the script, he kind of realized this isn't like regular science fiction. This is like Wizard of Oz
Yeah,
in that fantasy sense. Like
yeah,
it's more about the story and the adventure than anything else.
yeah. Um, so let's kind of like just jump right into the cast for this. This was very star-studded.
Yeah, it shouldn't be called Star Wars because there were no stars in the sky. They were all in this movie.
Ooh, that was painful. Um,
there's no war to be had because they're all in this movie. The
all right,
stars.
so I really like that the movie kind of had like some like recurring faces that we would see in like the original trilogy, mainly like Yoda, C3PO, and R2D2. And I love that they were all like voiced or like acted by their respective actors of Anthony Daniels, Kenny Baker, and Frank Oz. I thought that was like crazy. It's like, oh, it's them. It's still them. It sounds exactly like them. And I didn't really like associate that when I was a kid that it was like the same three people playing these same three characters. I just thought that was like really cool that we kind of saw like where they first kind of started from. And I also just really thought it was really cool seeing the C3PO scenes of just like him not with like any of his like plates on. It's just like all of his exposed circuitry and how they were able to film that. Because like watching behind the scenes of like just like C3PO kind of like walking around is crazy, because it was basically just Anthony Daniels in like a green screen like morph suit, or like it was either a green screen or a blue screen, because he
They
George Lucas kind
used
of did both.
mainly blue.
Yeah, but yeah, he basically had like a morph suit on, and he was just kind of like had the puppet of C3PO kind of like in front of him, and he had like the arms kind of like tied to like his forearms, and like the legs attached to him. So he was just kind of like operating it from behind and kind of like moving in like a janky way to kind of like get the feeling that like this robot was like moving on its own. This droid was moving on its own, which I thought was really cool. And Frank Oz and Kenny Baker, R.I.P. Kenny. Um, it was just really cool seeing that like these like such iconic characters that are in like the majority of the Star Wars movies were able to reprise their roles.
Special effects wise, what is? I mean, I don't know. What is the? Is there a difference between a blue screen versus a green screen?
There is, on like a technical aspect, I don't know the full difference between the two, because that wasn't really like my field at Chico when I
Yeah.
was kind of going over that. Um, I would honestly have to look that up. But that it was pretty much what George Lucas used for the majority of his films for the prequels, because like that was all like also like another really big complaint that people were having with this movie, because the originals were like all like heavily relied on like practical and special effects like that. There wasn't really, CGI wasn't really a thing back
Couldn't
then.
do much back then.
Yeah, it was very like lasers. That was about it. But this one, like that was one thing that he got like heavily criticized on, was that it was just so heavily based in CGI that it wouldn't age well, and I can kind of agree with that. Like towards like the final battle at the end, or like all the Gungans and the battle droids, they literally had like one character model for the Gungans. They had Jar Jar, they had like the Captain Tarpus, and then like every other Gungan was like the exact same copy and pasted Gungan model, and like all the battle droids were all the same.
Well, I mean, the battle droids were all the same though.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, yeah, that one makes sense, but I mean, still, it was just like two CGI armies, and they're fighting on like the Windows XP background.
Oh my god! Yes, that was my bigger issue. Was I was like, the sky is so fake blue. Like,
Yeah,
that was, I honestly, I took more issue with that than the copy and pasted Gungans.
yeah.
So
So let's kind of just jump into Jar Jar since
yeah,
we're talking about
okay. This is my
Gungans.
thing about Jar Jar, because it finally kind of
We gotta address the elephant in the room
I
here.
wanted to understand so badly why everybody hated him, and I know, isn't he like supposed to be? And I know, aren't there like many of these characters supposed to be kind of like racial caricatures or something?
You can very easily make that argument. Whether that's intentional or not is completely up to uh I guess creative difference, or I think that's completely up to what's the word I'm looking for? Audience
Because
interpretation.
some of them, I'm like, I feel like I don't think I would have thought of it until it was pointed out to me. And
Yeah, no, I've definitely gone down that rabbit hole.
But for Jar Jar, first of all, let's the other elephant in the room, because I think most people are aware Star Wars fans are not, and this is not every single Star Wars fan, but just in general, Star Wars fans are kind of the worst fans I think I've
Yes.
ever
Yeah.
heard of. Like, they are, and I understand, yes, this is a very much a generational franchise. Like, Harry Potter is starting to go down that road as, like, fans get older, but it was like, particularly when Phantom Menace came out, and even Mark Hamill, I don't know, maybe you guys have seen it. I saw it was like a snippet of an interview he did where he was saying how he was so furious about how everybody, especially Jake Lloyd, how they treated Jake Lloyd, which we'll talk when we talk about Jake Lloyd. But
Yeah.
it's just so unbelievable and inappropriate, and the fact that the actor who played Jar Jar,
Yeah, Ahmed Best.
a couple years ago, came out saying he almost killed himself over the backlash, which is like fans, do you see why that's
incredibly
horrifying?
Yeah, that's 100% messed up, and I can't believe that it got that bad, and it's still kind of being that bad with the way that a lot of the actors from the sequel series,
like half of them have quit social media just because they can't deal with
yeah,
it.
like the actress who played like Rose Tico, like she basically had to quit, and like Hayden Christensen basically told her, it's like, yeah, don't let them get to you. Like he gave her like a motivational thing, because he's been
Good for
dealing with
him.
that since Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
Like everyone kind of like hated him and his portrayal as Anakin.
I have, yeah, we'll talk about him when we get to Attack of the Clones. But yeah, good for him. But yeah, like Jake Lloyd, they like totally, that's why he left. He was a kid, and they just destroyed him. And it's like,
yeah, he had to been like what, like 8 years old.
Yeah, and
when this
Mark
came out?
Hamill said, you can
Something like
easily find it on YouTube. He said, like, he did exactly what George Lucas wanted him to do. He did not do anything wrong. And that, and just again, the actor who played Jar Jar, it was just like, this was all pre-social media. Can you imagine how much worse it could have been? And the fact that it was already that bad is just so horrifying and not okay. And so if you don't like the prequels, that's fine. If you don't like the sequels, that's fine. But it, you don't need to put your blame on.
It's disgusting.
It's disgusting, and you don't need to put your blame. The actor. I mean, I don't like blaming the actors. There are times where yes, they are to blame, but in this case, like, everybody needs to take a chill pill. Like, it's
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just glad that Ahmed Best kind of got into a better place, and he's still kind of doing acting. And just recently, or last year, he is now the host of a Star Wars themed like Legends of the Hidden Temple type show called Jedi Temple Challenge, where he's basically like a Jedi master, and he has to get these like 3 teams of like Jedi Padawans to get through their trials to become a knight. And it's very much a Legends of the Hidden Temple type like Nickelodeon show of them doing like obstacle courses and doing puzzles and solving riddles and stuff like that. So it's just really cool that he was kind of able to kind of get out of the shadow of Jar Jar
yeah.
Binks, if that makes sense, and become like a new character. I don't know if that's a canon character. It probably is at this point because Disney's rewriting everything, but we'll get to that later.
But that's good because
Um,
I whether was the accent and the whole speech, was that all George Lucas, was that all him, I don't know, but like, good thing he's
yeah.
moving forward from that. It did occur to me though, so enough about that stuff, but it did occur to me while watching Clone Wars, we when you guys said how like Jar Jar was definitely was slightly catered to kids. There were a bunch of unnecessary jokes, usually led by
Fart jokes.
or like Jar Jar stepping in like poop. Like, that wasn't why does this need to happen? How is this relevant? It's so stupid. I think there were maybe 2 Jar Jar jokes that I liked, and one was when he was like with his tongue at the dinner table at Anakin's house, when he was like with like a
Oh
frog,
yeah.
like grabbing food with his tongue, and then he does it a second time, and Qui-Gon grabs his tongue and tells him to stop. Or when his like foot gets caught in a battle droid, and then he's like, "Oh, if I like kick my leg, I can keep shooting other droids." Like, that was funny because it was useful.
Yeah.
And that other joke was just funny because like it was just, that was a funny I'll give them that. But like, it occurred to me,
Yeah.
we were supposed to like him the way people love like Olaf or something in Frozen. He's supposed to be that
Yeah.
cute, funny character. The problem is, I could look past his design, how he talks, but really it's just that he's so clumsy and it's almost never useful. It's just happening maybe for comic relief, and it's not funny. It's just there.
Yeah, but there was the quote that George Lucas said that Jar Jar's the key to everything, and that they kind of like all the backlash that like everyone was giving it towards Jar Jar, that it kind of slowly created the theory that Jar Jar Binks was a much more of a vital role to the prequel series than he is now, and that kind of led to the
Darth
full-on
Jar Jar.
theory of
Wasn't
Jar
that
Jar.
confirmed or something?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it's never been confirmed, nor has it been
I
denied.
just
So there's
kind of
still
love
hope for
that
that
idea
theory.
because
Yeah,
that's just amazing to me. If he is actually a Sith Lord.
yeah. There has been so much like evidence to say that
Wait,
it's
like what?
100% true, and that he's okay. So in Phantom Menace, when they're like in the like the submarine thing, kind of going through it, um, there's a bit where he kind of like slowly kind of like waves his hand in front of uh Obi-Wan's face, kind of similar to how they do mind tricks, and it's like, we should be going back now. And then it cuts to like them kind of turning the ship in the way that Jar Jar just said. So it's like, oh, did he just do a
Okay.
mind trick? Or like he gets really like loopy because like they basically like Vulcan nerve pinched him, and coincidentally after he's like very much drained, another giant fish comes by and eats the fish that's chasing them, because there's always a bigger fish, because he used the Force to summon that.
Oh.
Then
Wait,
there
Jar Jar
was
or Qui-Gon?
when Jar Jar summoned
Oh,
him.
okay.
And now he's just very drained because he used a lot of energy to do
The
that.
theory isn't just that Jar Jar is a Sith Lord. It's that he's the Sith Lord
Wait,
that's
Yeah,
masterminding everything.
Yeah,
that he's like
he's basically
above
like
Palpatine.
Well, that's the other part of it is he's also from Naboo, where Palpatine's from.
Oh my god. Oh
yeah.
my
There
god.
was a theory that like he was like Palpatine's master, and then they had to change it to Darth Plagueis because by that point everyone hated Jar Jar, and that theory was completely or whatever was supposed to happen with like Jar Jar was the key to everything. Story got completely like swept under the rug because everyone hated him. So when the third one rolled around and Palpatine needed to make Anakin into Darth Vader, there was the whole "Have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?" and that whole story. So that ended up becoming
I
his
mean,
canonical master.
that could
But the
just be Jar Jar's Darth, his Sith name.
Darth name,
His
yeah, I know. But I mean,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
like, but there's been like a novelization of like Darth Plagueis, and it was like
Have we ever met
I
Darth Plagueis?
no, only not in like any
Extended
like
stuff. He's in it.
only in like a
Oh,
novelization.
okay.
Well,
I think.
the Plagueis
Well,
novel is no
yes, I
longer
know
canon.
it's no longer canon. It's part
But
of
yeah.
Legends now, but I mean, for a while it was.
Okay.
Um,
We said this a little bit earlier. Like George Lucas, this is very clearly. I was thinking about this today because the sequels was not a consecutive story at all, and
no,
this was like this might not have been he mapped out everything, but he at least because we know how it's going to end. We know it has to end with Anakin becoming Darth Vader.
Yeah.
That's the end. So what happens between and so through that we have to meet him as a kid. So what happens in that allotment of time? So because he had like an actual like in a sense he had like a boundary or he had a stopping point. I think it was good because it was wide enough that he can go in many directions, as well as okay, he has to rein it in to get to this. It needs to go in this one direction,
yeah,
and so we're like 30 minutes in, and we've barely scratched the surface on this movie.
yep.
Sorry, guys, this might be a long episode. So
I kind of figured.
So this this episode 1, it kind of starts, this is obviously like 10 years before the Clone Wars, and so the Trade Federation is stopping trade with Naboo.
Yeah, they have a full blockade, which consists of 8 ships standing in one section in front of the planet, and that is a blockade of the entire planet, which makes no sense to me, no matter how many times it's been explained to me.
Yeah, it's the canon reason is they're blocking hyperspace lanes.
But it's just like,
but that's never mentioned in the movies at all.
No, which kind of confuses the living hell out of me. But it's just like, I'm just gonna go around.
Well, even in the movie, like Qui-Gon said, like this. I think it was Qui-Gon. He said like this doesn't really make sense why the Trade Federation would be doing this, and obviously, okay, we know it's the going to be Emperor. We know it's Darth Sidious or we know it's this guy. That's the other thing. Is Palpatine the Phantom Menace, or is it Darth Maul? It's Sidious, right?
It's not really known.
I always kind of interpreted it as the Sith because by that point, all the Jedi just assumed the Sith were gone, and then they just suddenly returned out of nowhere. It's like, oh, this menace, they've returned like a phantom, and that's just kind of like how I perceived that.
Okay. So yeah, Sidious is, or we don't know it's Sidious, but Sidious is saying
he
does?
Newt Gunray calls him Lord Sidious.
Oh, okay. Oh,
he doesn't call him Darth; he calls him Lord Sidious.
Yeah. Okay, so we know it's Sidious, and it still doesn't make sense. And the only thing I can assume is because we know we'll eventually find out later it's Palpatine, and Palpatine obviously being the senator of Naboo, like. Is that why? Like, other than him being connected to Naboo, what was the reason to choose Naboo for this?
He chose Naboo because Senator or Queen Amidala was so young that he felt like he could kind of manipulate her into getting the other like senators to vote of no confidence for the current chancellor, Chancellor Valorum, so that way he could run for chancellor and he could just assume all the power in order to continue on with his like 15 year plan of
I know.
ruling the
Holy
galaxy and
crap!
killing the Jedi. His plan is so fucking convoluted and so meticulously planned out that if like I felt like if one thing went wrong like so early on that it just completely like how can you salvage this?
But I
Like
think
there's so many things that could have gone wrong in just this one movie alone. It's
I
like
I agree, but I also think that's kind of the beauty in the whole thing is because it is so intricate and so detailed, and there were many factors in the end, at least many factors that if one thing had changed, I mean, it might not have exactly worked out the way it did. But it's kind of just mind blowing to me that he's such a the fact that it is so long that he's like at least it's like at least like 13 plus years of him planning this.
yeah,
Like
it's like a 20-year plan. It's like as old as
that also means he
Anakin.
has as much he has more time to, if something goes wrong, to make a quick change and adapt. So I think
Yeah.
if anything, I was just kind of my mind was just blown after Clone Wars. Like, holy crap, he is a criminal mastermind. Like, it's
Yeah.
so deep. It's
But
not even just how detailed the plan is, but how like the entire he the fact that again, I don't think when we were watching Phantom Menace, I don't think I knew that Palpatine was the Emperor. I think you were kind of like asking me like questions, maybe
yeah,
like
I was kind of asking you to gear it towards that to kind of like gauge what you knew so it didn't accidentally
I
spoil
didn't
anything.
know. I
Yeah.
think, but looking back now, I'm like he's so damn manipulative. And was the other for the previous Chancellor? Was he actually bad?
No, he was doing everything that he could. From what I remember, he was a very competent and pretty generally well liked chancellor. Like he was very like he had very good relations with Yoda. He like was able to like make very decent calculated decisions for the majority of the Senate. It was just Palpatine had manipulated so many senators that eventually like kind of joined the Confederacy of Independent Systems that it just bogged down delegations in the Senate that whenever any major crisis happened, like what was going on with Naboo that had somewhat time sensitive factors to them, that they would just get bogged down in like constant like floor meetings and debates and all these delegations that his hands were completely tied with bureaucratic red tape that he couldn't do
That is
anything.
kind of
So
why I
that way,
love this
yeah,
time, this period of Star Wars, because it's so much.
yeah,
It's not just. I mean, in like again, the original it's just as far as like we know, like a bad guy wants to take over be in control of the galaxy. That's it. But it's like it's so much more
yeah.
complicated. Like, and the fact that it's not just taking control. It's also like took control over an entire government and crippled it
Yeah,
and rebuilt, and it's just so intense and complicated, and I kind of love it
but
because of that.
yeah, but yeah, but my one critique is that, in all fairness, Palpatine's plan 100% should have failed with this movie
Yeah.
because when Queen Amidala shows up with like her entire like entourage, and she's like, "Hey, this is what's going on with the Boo. Like, we need your help right now." And then like the legal representation of the Trade Federation, which is another thing that makes which kind of confuses me, is the fact that this is a corporation, not a governing body. Why do they have a seat in
Yeah,
the
I was
Senate for the Galact? It's like that'd be like if Amazon and Starbucks have like their own like senators in our government. It
Well,
makes
it's
no sense, but
the
yeah,
Trade Federation is a individual group that's headed by Nemodia, the Nemodians,
yeah,
and
but
that's
it's not like
who.
Is that a system?
Yeah, but it's not like every.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a system, and that's what Newt Gunray and like pretty much everyone who works there
Okay.
is a Nemoidian. But it was just like, but that's not like the legal representation in lieu of Nemoidia. Like they have like their own legal representation, and then there's this. So it's not like this is in substitution for the other. It I just thought that was really weird that there was that, and then there was like the banking claim. There was all these other like legal representations of all these like corporations and like mining guilds and stuff like that in the Galactic Senate, where they could voice their reasons and push their agenda to make a profit, which that seems like such a bad idea to have a corporation in the Galactic Senate. But my main problem is that when Queen Amidala is stating her case and the Trade Federation shows up and is like, hey, I object, she has like zero proof, she's just making us look bad because her planet is being blockaded, totally legally, by the way, we are legally allowed to do this. And it's like, yeah, there's no proof saying that like her any of what she's saying is true. It's like, actually we have tons of evidence. I have two Jedis as witnesses. I have this footage of our ship getting shot at and like losing almost all but one of our droids, and I have this holo message of like one of my legal representatives saying that like the death toll is catastrophic, you must stop them.
Yeah.
So it's like, why was none of this brought to the floor instead of just getting rid of the Chancellor? I felt like that would have
That's
been way
where
faster,
the
just proving all of that with
external
all
canon
this
stuff kind of
evidence.
comes in. It's the Senate at this point is like broken because it's so corrupt. So it's like it's bogged down to the point where I can't get anything done,
Yeah,
and that all is poured onto Valorum's feet. But he's not the true cause of it.
I know. I felt like he kind of got dealt a bad hand because he basically is dealing with like yeah, he's
Basically,
dealing with
yeah.
like all of this like cancer, basically, is what he has. He basically is dealing with his cancer, and like it's like, let's just cut it out, and they're using him as a scapegoat so Palpatine can get in. But it's like you have so much overwhelming and an abundance amount of just very factual evidence that is like, even if half of the Senate was corrupt, that like the other half is like, yeah, what the hell? Let's do that. I feel like enough of the corrupt politicians are like, yeah, this is going to look bad if I don't vote yes on this, that eventually they will do that. Just so that they can at least kind of keep like a public image of being a fair politician.
That's a really good point, because the movie was just making it out like, oh, they're not going to go stop the Federation from occupying them. Let's just get rid of the Chancellor. But yeah, that's a good point. Like, hey, I do have proof. Or actually, better yet, come on, Congress, let's go take a field trip to Naboo, and you'll see. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's like my only gripe with this movie, and I feel like it's kind of like a huge thing. I feel like it was just done in a way of convenience for the sake of the story, but at the same time, it's just like, you guys could have easily convinced the Senate. I don't know why you guys are doing it in this
also,
way.
does do the like
But I
queen or the
digress.
ruler of the system outrank the senator? Because the senator is just like a representative
They're
of that system.
It's the senator is just a representative to the
Yeah.
Senate,
So yeah,
not the leader of the people.
yeah, no, yeah, no, I feel like it'd be kind of like if like the prime minister is still the prime minister of England, but they're still like the representative in like the UN. The prime minister still
Okay.
outranks the representative in the UN, but the representative of the UN represents them
Okay.
as a
Well,
whole.
it's
And
just
all
like in
their
the
interests.
U.S., we have senators in the Senate, but the governor is the one that's essentially has the most power in the state.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, so Queen Amidala, who's Natalie Portman and
Like-
sometimes Keira Knightley, which I think the first time I watched it, I couldn't tell the difference. Like, I knew, yes, that's Natalie Portman, and I knew that she was the queen, but like when I first watched it, it was hard to identify when the switch happened, and then now I feel like it's super obvious. Their faces are similar enough but different enough that you can see when it's clearly the bodyguard or when it's the decoy. And
Yeah.
she's like what, supposed to be like 14?
I think canonically she's like 14, 15 years old when she's the Queen of
So
Naboo.
what? And they just anyone can be any age can be a ruler.
She was the youngest, I
She was the
believe, but
youngest ever elected queen,
yeah,
which
but
is weird because they use queen, but she was elected.
Yeah.
It's basically it's a title, but yeah, it's basically prime minister. She basically has the power of that. She isn't like it's not like a birthright. Like
Yeah.
yeah, it makes no sense why she's called queen when it's an
I
elected
mean,
position because
queen
yeah,
does sound better than like yeah,
no,
but
it
yeah, no,
does,
I
but
yeah.
yeah, it is kind of confusing when they call her a queen, where it's like, no, that's not what a queen does, but
But
okay.
I really want to talk about so the first scene of this movie when two Jedi have been sent by the Chancellor to what's going on with the Trade Federation, and it's Qui-Gon, Liam Neeson, and how old is Obi-Wan supposed to be in this? Like 18, maybe? He's
Oh,
57 in A New Hope,
Be
I think.
25,
in his
I
20s, I
think.
want
Well,
to say
what is
then.
like the age for like that's the thing. They're saying they don't want to train Anakin because he's too old, and he's like 9. How old technically is a youngling? Like, what is the age range?
like 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 3.
3. Well, then when do you come in the
Like very young. Like they try to get them like as early as not as early as
Yeah,
possible.
it's anytime they show younglings in other media,
well? When
they're
do you
always as
what is
Yeah.
the age you
toddlers.
become like a Padawan?
You basically become a Padawan once you're
Once you can function on your own.
yeah. Well, I thought it was like you become a Padawan once you actually have like an assigned master, and everyone else was just considered like a youngling or like a Padawan
Well,
learner.
because Anakin obviously just seems to skip youngling and goes right into being a Padawan.
Yeah, he gets straight into like, yeah, you're gonna be trained by Obi-Wan like
And that just was
immediately.
calling it because we know
Um,
they say he's 9, and then the next movie is 10 years later, so he's got to be 19, and the next one's 3 years later, so he's like 21. So age, I know his age. It's really just Obi-Wan that I'm just really curious. He's got to be, yeah, like okay, I can believe he's in his like late 20s, maybe, or not, sorry, early 20s. I mean late teens, early 20s.
yeah, it's like early 20s, like
Okay.
yeah. Um,
So yeah, Naboo's being occupied, and they get the queen out, and they end up on Tatooine. And okay, so breathe. Well, because what was it like? They needed a new part, and this was the closest
yes,
planet.
because reasons. Oh yeah, yeah. Their hyperdrive was leaking, and they decided to hide out on Naboo or on Tatooine because it's controlled by the Hutts, and the Hutts aren't looking for them.
Yeah, which is,
Which
I
makes
mean,
sense.
yeah. Um,
Um, yeah,
so on the ship is when we meet Padme for the first time, and obviously Padme later is revealed as Queen Amidala, and
like
the
gasp.
person who's standing in is the decoy, like her bodyguard. First of all, how old is the bodyguard supposed to be? Like also 14?
Around the
Yes.
same age.
Okay. And I was just thinking like I understand, okay, let's just keep her out of the spotlight, and it's safer to have the bodyguard take the place of the danger, but be and stand in the way of the danger. Anyway, but I didn't understand why she would still use her name. Obviously, the captain and all the people on board are recognize like know that Padme is the queen, but and I can believe that the Jedi don't know realize it, but wouldn't they have known her name? Like,
I'm
oh, Queen Padme Amidala. You're also named Padme? Like,
I
huh. Crazy.
I mean, I'm sure it was like Padme is a relatively common name on Naboo, and it's not like
That's
she was.
yeah.
And I'm sure, and it's not like she was giving out her last name. It's like, oh, hi, I'm
Yeah.
Padme. It'd be like me going, I was like, hi, I'm John. When it's like, oh, it's like, what's your last name? It's like, irrelevant.
Well, it's
John Irrelevant, yeah.
even for Padme, her Amidala isn't her family name. It's
Oh.
it's her Rengol, or it's the name you take when you become a ruler.
Because
I did
she's
not know that.
eventually is because she's still, when she's senator, she's still Senator Amidala.
Yeah, it's
So what is her family name? If do you know?
it's Nabari.
So when they I forgot, when they're escaping Naboo, and of course there's all these droids that go out to fix
The hyperdrive.
hyperdrive, and all of them die except one, the only one we care about, R2. It's just, I just love that this is a world where there's even throwaway robots that, like, oh, it doesn't matter, we know they're gonna die because obviously, I almost said Obi-Wan, because obviously R2 is not gonna die here.
Yes.
At least,
Or at all.
or at all,
R2
yeah.
is immortal in our hearts.
I mean, he's a droid, so
Yeah, droids
yeah.
are essentially immortal.
I mean, R2's the biggest point of that is he's blown up how many times?
Yeah. I think,
I mean,
out of like everyone in the Star Wars like canon, R2 has like the highest like kill count, rivaled next to Darth Vader.
I mean, this is a world where you can survive being blown up. You can survive being cut in half. You can survive being electrocuted and thrown down a hole. Like, it seems very, if you're an important character, it's very hard to die.
Plot armor is real in Star Wars.
Um,
Or is that just the Force?
Well, I mean, if Phantom Menace was the first movie to have been filmed, R2 would have been just the random droid that survived.
yeah, we wouldn't have thought anything
It's
of it.
only it's only important. It's only a weird thing that he survives because we know that he is the one that's going to survive.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um,
But yeah, no, that kind of reminds me. There was a funny moment where my old roommate Aaron, his car like wasn't working, and we were talking about Star Wars at the time, because of course we were.
what else are
And
you talking
his
about?
engine was stalling, and he eventually got it starting again. And I just immediately, because we were talking about Phantom Menace, and I immediately said, it's like, that little droid did it. He bypassed the main power drive. Just immediately quoted like a random line from that movie, and it kind of just became a running joke every time he started his car. It's like, that little droid did it. Bypass the main power drive.
So anyway,
They're on Tatooine now, and then we find Jake Lloyd playing young Annie Skywalker.
little he
Yeah, little Annie.
which there's actually a
And-
Star
and
Kid Star Kid, they did like a Harry Potter musical and stuff like that. They did like a Star Wars musical called Annie.
Yeah. Oh God.
But
I can only imagine what that's parodying.
so
And we also meet his master, Watto, who's probably just a caricature of just. I felt like the majority of the alien races in this movie, were some kind of racial caricature.
Yeah.
And I think you can all imagine what Watto was trying to be.
Okay, here's the thing.
I don't want to say it. I don't want to be canceled.
Well, because one of my friends made the point saying he actually looked kind of like a very cliche, like, Italian guy. And I was like, and I think it was the way he spoke.
Yeah,
and I was like,
I can see it.
I didn't.
Not the caricature I
And
heard.
Kevin,
I know,
Kevin,
and
we all
that's
know
not-
where you're going.
Yeah, and I'm.
Yeah. It's like, this is coming from an Italian.
It doesn't. It doesn't really. It's. Yeah, I mean, there are various caricatures throughout this. It's just unnecessary. Like,
Yeah, like the main ones being Jar Jar Watto and
Federation?
Newt Gunray. Yeah,
Yeah.
literally everyone from the Federation.
Oh, so actually, quick side question. So, they kept calling him Viceroy. Was that his name or a title?
That's his title.
That's his
Okay,
title.
that's what I thought.
His name is Newt Gunray.
Okay, that's it's Viceroy, but my friends call me
he's,
Roy.
Yeah. Yes, he is Viceroy of the Trade Federation. And fun fact, the reason why they picked battle droids to be like their like security, like enforced protocol like droids was because the design of the head resembles what like mummified Nemoidians look like, and that was purely coincidental because they were actually designed more to look like their designers, which are the Geonosians, who we meet in episode 2.
I mean, but the original concept art for the Nemoidians was identical.
Oh yeah, the original concept for the
that picture I
Nemoidians
just
looks
sent
way
you.
different.
I can throw it in the
Yeah,
Discord.
it looks way different. I'll try and send that in Discord later, but yeah, it's just look up original concept art for like Newt Gunray, and it is completely different than what we get in the movie, which is still really cool seeing in like all the original concept art. But yeah, that was another fun fact for you guys.
So yeah, Watto is an unnecessary caricature, and Anakin is his slave, and they go to him because they need like a part. And I think that at this point, I was just like, because again, knowing what was gonna happen, because I do think as an audience, as a like Kevin and like Ben, the first time you guys saw this, did you assume that Padme was gonna be his like love interest in the next film? Like, did you think?
Not really.
Yeah, because I think I was just like, wait, so this kid is gonna get Natalie Portman pregnant? Like, that just was. I mean, as an adult, he will, but like.
Yeah, well, keep in mind we were
like I was
maybe
that I can remember. I can't remember the first time I saw this movie.
But okay, I don't mean the pregnant part, but the whole like aware of thinking of her as like a love interest.
Yeah, no, like I had no idea about that. I mean, I was like at most 5 years old when I saw this movie, maybe 6. I had no concept of like what romance was.
That would have been like fun.
I thought romance was sharing fruit snacks at lunch. That's what my concept of romance was as a child, Sam. Is that what you want me to know? I thought Anakin was going to share fruit snacks with her. That's what I thought.
If he shared his gushers with her, well,
yeah, he was going to share his gushers, and then he was going to pull his hair, and that's how Padme would know that he liked her. That's what my entire concept of romance was at that age when this movie came out.
But you think viewing this as an adult, like if you, let's say you hadn't seen it, because again, I wasn't even just like I assumed, like I knew that she is gonna be that what was gonna happen. So I feel like I'm just curious to any like an adult watching this when this came out, where they like, oh yeah, she's obviously gonna be Luke and Leia's mother, or it was just she's just the character in this. I'm just but obviously if you guys don't remember that, it doesn't really make a difference.
I mean, yeah, like you're kind of asking like
I know,
guys, because we
I
saw
feel like
what I mean, but you understand
it's one of the things. It's like
ago.
I feel like it's something I've just always known was a thing. I can't think back to like, oh wow.
It's hard to imagine us not knowing what we know especially when it comes to Star Wars. It's just kind of something that's like it's just such an integral part of like who we are as people that we just have like this knowledge like permanently planted in our heads at such a young age.
Like the whole Vader thing, even that's something that I've just always known.
Yeah, like Luke is like Vader is Luke's father. Like that's something that
Well, spoilers, Kevin. Come on.
We talked about that a year ago.
No,
Come on.
I don't know. You could have some weirdos watching your podcast in chronological order.
But I agree. Like I get what you mean by that, because that was the thing. It was like by the time I finally got into Star Wars, I obviously knew all this stuff. There was very little surprise, unfortunately. I think there were some surprises. More so I think in the prequels, but there was very little like I knew pretty much everything.
I do remember.
I know, that's why I'm like, we'll talk about it when we get there. We'll talk about it when we get there.
Yeah, there's.
I knew you were gonna figure it out.
Oh, I'm so excited.
God, okay.
It's like there's one thing That got you so off guard, and I kind of wish that I had gotten your reaction. I really wish that I was filming it, because it was just...
I think
it was
that
gold.
my memory of your reaction to something, of you watching my reaction, or that, what we'll talk about in a couple of weeks, and
Yep.
that one episode of Danny Phantom that's like Infinity War. Is that those are right?
Yeah, that's right.
You literally went. You
Oh my
literally turned
god,
to me and
yes.
you went, and jaw drop. As my jaw.
Yep,
was
and you
dropping.
dropped.
Anyway, so Anakin, young Anakin, I mean, again, we talked. I have no real issue with Jake Lloyd. Everybody get over yourself. He was just a kid. He was just
He did what he
being
was
in a
told.
movie. He did yeah, exactly. He did what he was told. I don't really have an issue with his performance.
Yeah, I never had an issue with Jake Lloyd or like his portrayal as Anakin. It was just kind of like, I think the only major gripe that I can see people having with Jake Lloyd being Anakin was he was such an innocent little kid. How did this kid turn into the ruthless killing machine that is Darth Vader? Like, how could he go from this to one of the most iconic villains in cinematic history? I think that was what people were having a hard time dealing with and accepting, was how can you tarnish something that is so iconic and beloved? And,
but that's kind of what I actually really like, because it kind of the sense of, but also the whole reason of why he turns to the dark side. There's from this episode to the very end, there were so many factors, and I kind of love that. I agree, he is, maybe you could say he's a little too innocent, but he's just a kid living. He's a mom. He's trapped in this. He's a slave.
Yeah, him and his mom are both slaves.
Like, I think of anything performance wise, it's very much a 90s character. Like, oh no, this is not good. Like, it's a little of that. I'm trying to, like,
almost sitcom-y kind of vibes.
Yeah, or like, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It totally is a sitcom, because he just like rolls up to his house. He's like, "Mom, I'm home. I found these people on the street. I brought them home with me." one of them's a crazy alien with weird ears.
Yeah, hope we have enough food to feed these like 3 extra people I just picked up. Even as us as slaves, we can afford to feed 3 extra mouths.
Oh yeah, they don't have any money either.
Yeah.
That was okay. So something I noticed though was and maybe in his room, it's very, there is a wiffle ball like catcher.
Yes.
Like, just
that's just been painted
I had
silver.
one of those as a kid.
I did too. And they're
did every
like,
kid in the 90s
yes,
just have one of
I had those too. My cousin had them. Played it all the time.
Yeah.
And I think, but also the cups that they're using, they look, I don't know, they look very much like 90s plastic cups, like that I had in my house, or my grandparents had. Like, they very much look, they don't look, and I know it's not really a complaint, it was more of an observation. It was just kind of funny that these little 90s-esque things just managed to make their way into Star Wars. And so actually, going back to when we first meet Anakin, and he and Padme start talking, and she's like, "Oh, you're a slave," and he's like, "I'm a person, and my name's Anakin." Like, I'm very like, he clearly, I just think it's kind of adorable, but also sad that he, as a 9-year-old, recognizes that he's, as a slave, could so easily like be stripped of his identity and
lose his identity. Like lose his sense of being a person.
Yes, and the fact that he just clearly is holding on to that so much that he yells at a random person who's, and she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know," and
It's
she
like,
later says,
Yeah, it's
Well,
like yeah. She later has no idea that like slavery was like still a thing.
because the
The Republic.
does not exist out here.
Yeah.
Um,
So kind
yeah,
of jumping forward,
yeah.
they find the part in like Waters' garage, but he only wants to sell using credits, and they only have Republic credits, so they don't.
Well, you missed the whole point where Watto claims he's the only one that has Nubian parts for their specific ship.
They need like this one very specific part, and he apparently is the only person who has it. So they decide to gamble what money they have, including their ship, and they basically are like gambling literally everything that they own on a pod race, which I feel like is arguably like one of like the best parts of the movie is the pod
Yeah.
race.
Okay, here's
It's
my.
like that and Duel of the Fates are like the best parts of this movie, in my opinion.
This is what I think is funny because, um, okay, I don't remember. I can't think of his last name, but Kevin, do you remember Ben? We had a couple classes with him. He would sometimes hang around BCAC
A
TV.
little,
He
yes,
one
kinda.
time said how like I think it was when we were watching the prequels, and I was telling him that we're watching them, and he said how like we were talking about how bad it was, and he was saying how like everybody like when people say like no pod racing's great, he's like no you think it's great. And I realize because the pod racing is really fun. The problem, this is where some of the plot issues. Actually, there's something we skipped, which we'll talk about in a second. But basically, it goes on for so long, and
Well, you gotta share the whole race, all 3
but
laps.
we know at this point we see that Darth Maul has been sent. He's trying to kill. I mean, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, correct? He's going after the Jedi.
Yeah, he is sent to capture Queen Amidala and bring her back to Naboo so she can be forced to sign the
Oh,
settlement
okay.
treaty
Okay.
to make their invasion of Naboo legal.
Okay. And we see him arrive, and then we see like his like droid, like fighter droid flying around, and then we don't see him for a very long time, and then we see him just before he attacks Qui-Gon. And I told this to my friends, like this was my issue, that I felt like the build up to not just this fight, but I feel like just this is where I think the plot is thin because they didn't. Uh, there was so much world building or building upon stuff we already know, which is great, but like that when we get to Darth Maul is like on his like speeder and then like just jumps out of nowhere. My friends are like, "Oh, this came out of nowhere." I'm like, "See, like it just seemed so random because we weren't being given a proper build up." And that's
Well, I feel like there was like proper build
no,
up
I
because like
think
there were a couple scenes of like him on like Tatooine, and he's like you see like the probes kind of going around searching the city, and like when
yes.
after like the pod race and like Qui-Gon's talking to Watto is like you're gonna pay up, right? You see like the probe like literally like fly by him in the background and then like zip away because like
Or
oh I found the Jedi, let's go. I gotta tell my
I'm
master.
like, okay, so but or there should be at least like the if we didn't see the entirety of the pod race and it cut to just something else that furthered the plot because it
It's I it's been a long time since I've watched them, but I think there was a cut
there I
scene
don't
There probably
there
on
might
was.
have, but it wasn't
I
that long or offered really anything of use. It was really primarily in this Anakin, focusing on Anakin and the other pod racers and cutting back and forth to Qui-Gon and the mother and Padme all watching. And I just
yeah,
think if it
yeah,
was put
one
something useful, I think it would have made it a little bit
yeah what
stronger.
Yeah, I don't remember a lot of the cut scenes from Phantom Menace. The one that I do remember is when Anakin is like fixing up his ship, the pod racer, and like like there's the scene of like all of his like friends showing up, and like one of them's like this like short little like Rhodian friend. There's a cut scene of like another Rhodian showing up, kind of bullying Anakin, and his Rhodian friend is like, "Hey, brother, leave him alone." And it's like, "Shut up." And then he says that his brother's name, the one that bullying Anakin, is Greedo.
Okay.
So
the,
that
the
was a
same
thing.
Greedo
But that
from
doesn't
New Hope.
really.
Yes, the same. This apparently the same
But
Greedo.
that
Yeah,
isn't
literally adds nothing
Yeah,
to the
see,
movie.
that
It's just like, fun name drop.
as
Okay, bye.
that should be cut because that doesn't do anything. I just think that was my issue was the build up to the ending wasn't done. I think it wasn't as strong as it could have been, and I think the pod racing, although it is fun, it takes up a lot of time, and if it was cut down just like a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit, and cut to something else, just or another like Obi-Wan and the rest of the people from the Boo are still on the ship, or even another scene like Darth Maul is like they're running out of time, like he's getting closer and closer to finding them, like something like that. So yeah, I think the pod racing is really fun. I think personally it goes on for a little bit too long. And
Yeah.
also, fun fact, I love how throughout this, so the speaker, the announcer, is Tom Hanks.
Yes.
And it's very noticeably Tom Hanks. Like you can totally hear it. And
The
Warwick.
crowd's going wild.
Oh, also I thought it was just funny. The crowd was hilarious because they're like, oh no, Anakin or young Skywalker has like
Yes, young Skywalker is stalled.
he's about to die, or saying something that sounds really
Yeah.
bad, and the whole audience
Yeah,
is
it's
like,
like-
whoa, like what? Are you rooting against
Oh,
him?
I don't care what galaxy you're from. That has to hurt.
Uh,
It's like, oh, here comes Mahonic on his Fennec BT Cruiser.
There
Who's
goes
the-
Ben Quadranero's power coupling.
Quadranero.
Yeah.
He looks like
I remember that one the most because his name is Ben.
That's the only Ben character.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
the second
Ben
Ben that
Kenobi.
showed up on Tatooine.
Okay,
So apparently
fair enough.
Ben is just a common name on Tatooine.
Yeah.
Except it isn't because Obi-Wan used the name Ben before he ever went to Tatooine. Or before he ever lived on Tatooine.
Wait,
Yeah.
he did?
That's
Yeah,
the name he
that's
went
just
by
like-
briefly during the Clone Wars arc where he went undercover as a bounty hunter.
Wait, I
I think.
remember that episode. I don't remember
Or-
that.
No, he was under
He went under
the identity of
Another bounty hunter.
yeah, it was
Yeah,
another
but no.
pre-existing bounty hunter, but he did have
He
the
used the
nickname
name-
of Ben.
he used the name Ben in Clone Wars at one point.
Maybe I just didn't
Yeah.
notice that. Okay.
Yeah, no, that was a known nickname that he had, which makes no sense that like that Vader didn't find him sooner. It's like, wait, Ben Kenobi. Could that be my old master Obi-Wan, Ben Kenobi?
No,
it
his
couldn't
name
be-
wasn't Ben.
It couldn't be him.
Yeah.
Wait, but he is wearing Jedi robes.
No, his name
No,
wasn't
it couldn't
Ben.
be him. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so they do the pod race and manage to get all the parts, and then Maul confronts like Qui-Gon for all of 2 seconds before they escape, and it's like, I have no idea what the hell that was, but he was trained in the Jedi Arts. We gotta tell the Council when we get back to Coruscant.
So we.
And when they get there, they get to Coruscant, and Anakin's kind of being briefly trained by the pilot, which kind of leads into like, oh, that's why he was such a good pilot, because he was trained at such an early age.
We gotta.
and-
Oh wait, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
No, but I'm saying we gotta talk about something very important that we have not brought up yet. So, two things. One, metachlorians. They're stupid. Let's just.
Fuck, no, we are not talking about midichlorians.
Yes! So, okay, they, Qui-Gon is hanging out with Anakin, and then he does a blood test and sends it to Obi-Wan, and he's like, wow, these are off the charts. Like, was it like 2,000? Even Yoda doesn't have a reading like this. And this
Yeah.
just pissed me off because metachlorians are a major cop-out. Because they're trying...
because they were trying to come up with like some way to measure how much someone.
Yeah, they had to
can
give
be
some way to
attuned
know. It's like,
the Force.
oh, look how powerful he is. He's
As
there's
Yeah,
all
ro-
the Force in him.
Yeah, well, rather than I felt like they should have done something kind of like how like Green Lanterns are able to use their power ring of like it's only as strong as the person's will.
Well, they could have also done it like they do in Harry Potter at the beginning of the first Harry Potter, is just show Anakin accidentally using the
that
Force to
is
do
what
stuff.
I was telling I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Or because I was thinking about this,
Well-
how Darth Vader, at the end of New Hope says like, "Wow, the Force is strong with this one," and he like, and Qui-Gon could have just said that. He could have just said like, "I've never felt such a strong presence of the Force than I do from this kid," because
Yeah,
he's half
I
Force. Like,
yeah,
because isn't
because
it?
he was born of the
Because isn't it?
Force.
Like I think my roommate was saying how like there was the Force, there was an imbalance, and so they literally just, it's like a Jesus thing, I think was what we were saying.
Yeah, they were basically trying to make him a Jedi Jesus thing, but I felt like the perfect way to kind of allude to the fact that like Anakin was so strong with the Force is when uh Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan land there. It's like, do you sense it, Master? I do. And when they
Yes,
get kind of closer to there, they kind of like, it's like they're not really, he's not really going there to like search for parts. It's like, I'm gonna investigate this, Obi-Wan. You stay here with the ship, stay here with the Queen. And you kind of hear that like musical score of like like kind
yeah.
of going in as he's like going there, and it's like looking at the shop, and we just see like Anakin like walking around kind of cleaning up the shop. It's like, oh hey, how can I help you?
You've thought a lot about this.
And I have.
I totally agree. I was thinking the same thing, like Harry Potter. Like in Harry Potter, you have powers or you don't. Like it's not really a how, you just do. And it wasn't, it was, yeah, it was also they wanted an excuse to be like, wow, he's off the chart strong. But they also, and I kind of like 1% appreciate the effort, but they were also trying to give it a reason for like, because I remember the first time I watched Star Wars, I'm like, so can just anybody use the Force? Could Han use it if he wanted to? And no,
I mean, they
yeah.
kind of, it's kind of alluded that he is somewhat force sensitive, and that's why he's such a good pilot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Well, maybe Han's bad
well.
example, but
There's a line in the movie that it's like he's the only human that can do pod racing.
yes.
Yeah.
And I just think we didn't, I appreciate that, yes, because I remember questioning that, but giving it just, it just seems kind of stupid. I don't think they're that necessary. It could have just been like, wow, he's really strong. And I remember I was thinking,
Yeah, and
and I remember thinking like when Darth Vader makes note of, wow, Luke is really strong, like before he knows it's Luke, I was thinking like, you know, Obi-Wan never said anything to Luke like, wow, you're really strong. And I realized, and then I realized, because we find out in like spoiler in Star Wars Rebels, the reason he stayed on Tatooine is to kind of keep an eye out on Luke. So he knows this already. So that actually makes sense, but it's
yeah,
just they're a cop out
it's 100% a cop out, and I feel like Star Wars Clone Wars kind of makes a better,
a little.
like it definitely helps out the whole midichlorian force belief issue in
Is it
uh
the
in season
yes.
6
Yeah.
with the wills of the Force, which is a completely different tangent. So we're just gonna jump right back into this. They are now on Coruscant, and they're doing the whole appealing to the Senate, which I kind of talked about earlier, of not making a whole lot of sense with the overwhelming amount of evidence that they have. I mean, holy shit. Why did they not just show the footage of them getting shot at by the Trade Federation? That 100% would have made them super liable for at least damages.
We're just gonna skip over them leaving
I
Tatooine and selling the pod racer and all that stuff.
wait, okay.
God damn it, Ben.
Which it's because it's at least when Qui-Gon tries to sell the pod to Watto to get Shmi freed. That's a pivotal thing to the whole
Well,
series.
I thought that Shmi was no, because in episode 2, Shmi was still a slave,
She's
and then he sold her in episode 2.
Well, it's Qui-Gon is trying to convince Watto to to sell the pod racer to free Shmi, and Watto says no pod is
no
worth
pod is
a
worth two
slave.
slaves.
No pod
That's
is worth
before the
2
pod.
slaves.
That's what it is. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm glad we cut back to Tatooine because, and we'll talk about this more in when we talk about Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. But I feel like, and I highly recommend like you guys, but as well as any Star Wars fan ever, if you haven't checked out the Mandalorian docuseries, I highly recommend it. Dave Filoni, you could probably find this bit on YouTube. Dave Filoni does this really beautifully analyze like a speech essentially about the the original trilogy and the prequels and how and basically and like what kind of like why everything happened and how it all really comes back to Anakin more so than Luke. So I won't get into that right now, but part of that is because of Qui-Gon, because Qui-Gon, it would have, this is right here in the beginning is one of the things that happened that changed the future, that one of the many factors of why Anakin went to the dark side is Qui-Gon dies, but also Qui-Gon understands, and this is what Dave Filoni is talking about, how Qui-Gon understands, like, he's leaving his mother, even though, yes, he's been a slave, this is only everything he's known. And he understands that in a way that Obi-Wan doesn't. And I think the reason for that is because Qui-Gon was really progressive. He's also kind of, I think, like, is it like I kind of viewed it as he's what the Jedi used to be or what they should be, and like Obi-Wan is more of a product of like what the Council and the Jedi have become.
And there was actually a really interesting line of dialogue that Count Dooku says in the novelization of Attack of the Clones, of that I'll have to find it when we kind of go more into that, but he basically says that one of the reasons why he left the Order prior to the events of the movie is that he feels that the Jedi Order, they have become
wrapped up in politics,
and that when you're around corruption so much that you tend to go blind to it because it's just it's an everyday occurrence. Like the example that I remember hearing was that if you're standing next to a dumpster that just smells horrible, like such a rancid smell, and you're standing by it every day, that the smell eventually kind of gets a little less worse for you. And that's basically what the Jedi are doing with the current state of the Republic, because Chancellor Palpatine has been slowly corrupting like the very nature and the foundations of the Republic for years, and they haven't been able to do anything or even really sensed anything was going wrong.
And that'd be essentially Palpatine the Sith slowly bringing the power of the dark side back until the Jedi suddenly like realize they can't see anything.
He it's gotten to the point where like he's clouded the entire future, that like any Jedi that has like a precognitive ability of like clairvoyance that like Yoda has, and like some of the other more like prevalent members of the Council, the future is completely clouded. They can't see anything past a certain point.
It's kind of, and I think that's kind of why I love Dave Filoni's like analysis of the whole thing. It's because it's so in depth, and I didn't think about it that way. And even like I remember it like cut to like Bryce Dallas Howard, she was one of the directors, and even everyone was just like, oh my god, like holy crap. Like,
I mean, Dave Filoni he is Star Wars at this point.
He's like, I say, like, he's the Padawan of George Lucas.
There's no one that's worked more on Star Wars or closer with George Lucas than Dave.
No, and he's done such great things for Star Wars, and I think that's one of the reasons why, like, The Mandalorian, as opposed to the sequels, are so much better because Dave Filoni is heavily involved. And just, it's like, I think also the prequels as well. The prequels feel like Star Wars, and the sequels don't.
They really don't.
And my biggest issue was, I remember there was this element of fun in A New Hope and Empire and Return of the Jedi, and it just was not there in Force Awakens, because the stakes were just so damn high. It just didn't feel fun.
Because it was just, for the majority of like the original trilogy, it just felt like a fantasy adventure. Like you could relate to a lot of the characters. And with like Rey's character, she was just so naturally good at everything. It made her completely like you couldn't relate to her because she was perfect at everything, and every single character has flaws. They literally wrote her with zero flaws, which made her like
Mhm.
so completely unrelatable and made her like one of the most uninteresting characters.
Well, it's part of the problem with Force Awakens was basically it was they remember all those things you liked about the other Star Wars movies? We slapped a new coat of paint on them, and here they are.
Yeah, it's literally
and
just
not as good.
yeah, it's A New Hope 2, Electric Boogaloo.
But and then Return of the Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, they're both good movies. They just weren't good Star Wars movies.
Return of the Jedi, though, I think is a great. I love Return of the Jedi, and I think it's a great ending of.
Did I say Return of the Jedi?
Yeah, you said
Yes,
Return
you
of the
did.
Jedi.
Sorry,
I was
Rise,
very confused
Rise of
for a
Skywalker.
second.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's like, dude,
the second,
you're speaking some Star
9.
Wars heresy right
Sorry.
now.
8 and 9.
Like-
Episodes 8 and 9.
Okay.
Okay, yes. Last Jedi, I think, had a lot of
That's
really
what it was, yeah.
great things about it. Oh no, when you said Return, I'm like, I mean, okay,
No, yeah,
I know
sorry,
it's not
yeah,
everybody's
I meant-
favorite,
I
but
meant
Yeah,
Last
it's
Jedi.
like Ben, like what?
My brain's not working right now for some reason.
Well, I think that's a good point for us to stop then.
yeah, this will go on for way too long, so I think we're gonna break this up into 2 episodes, and that we'll have them released on the same day on May 4th, and
to be concluded.
Mm-hmm. So until you click on the next one, I'm Samantha Tomlinson.
I'm Kevin Tracy, and if you like this, feel free to go back to some of our previous ones, like Lighthouse, where Ben was a guest star. If you like to listen to him talk about stuff as well as us.
Yep.
And I'm Ben Deckard.
Oh, and I'm also Kevin. Peace. See you next time, and may the Force be with you.